All right, today we're jumping into a really powerful message about a struggle that, let's be honest, every single one of us faces: fear. We're going to break down this incredible sermon about hope and how you can transform that sinking feeling of impossibility into some truly powerful faith. So let's get right into it.
You know that feeling, right? We've all been there. That moment where you feel completely and utterly stuck, like every single path is blocked and there's just no way forward. Well, that feeling, that's the exact starting point of the battle we're talking about today.
And this quote it nails it. The sermon frames this whole thing not just as, a bad mood, but as a psychological war. It's a deliberate strategy to paint the darkest possible picture of your reality, and the whole point is to make you just give up. Okay, so the very first step is to learn to recognize this voice of despair for what it really is. It's that little voice inside your head that only focuses on your weaknesses and just blows up your problems until they seem absolutely 100% unbeatable. And this sermon gets really specific about what this voice tells you. It whispers things like, all the doors are closed, or there's no way out for you. You're just too weak. This burden is way too heavy. And the big one, there's no use in even trying. Learning to spot these specific lies is the key to fighting back. But this is where everything changes. This is the pivot. The sermon gives us this incredible counterargument. Stop looking at your own limitations and start looking at a power that has no limits at all. Let me show you what I mean with a few mind-blowing examples.
Okay, first up, Moses. He literally starts his life as a baby who's been condemned to die, thrown into a river. I mean, it does not get more hopeless than that. And yet he becomes the leader who parts the Red Sea. He goes from certain death to a legendary hero. It's an unbelievable transformation.
Or what about Saul of Tarsus? This guy wasn't just some opponent, he was a violent persecutor. He was the enemy, dragging people to prison. And then what happens? He becomes Paul the Apostle, maybe the single most influential evangelist in all of history. What a turnaround.
And then you've got Joseph, betrayed by his own family, sold as a slave, and then thrown in prison for something he didn't even do. You really can't get much lower than that. But he rises up to become the second most powerful man in all of Egypt, saving an entire civilization.
And just one more, Nehemiah. He was a captive, an exile in a foreign land. His biggest hope was probably just getting his freedom back. But instead, he becomes the man who spearheads the rebuilding of the entire walls of Jerusalem. So, what does all this mean for us right here, right now?
Well, see, these aren't just cool stories from long ago. The sermon argues that they reveal a deep truth that's meant for you to apply to your own life. This is where we shift gears from just watching God's power to actually tapping into it ourselves.
And here's the crucial distinction. Most people of faith would totally agree with that first statement. All things are possible for God. Yeah, that's a known truth. But the sermon points us to a much deeper, much more empowering truth. All things are possible for the believer. See the difference? The power isn't just something out there to admire. It's something for you to use. And this famous verse, it becomes like your personal anthem for this whole idea. It's not about your own strength, not at all. The idea is that through faith, this external, limitless strength, well, it becomes your strength. And suddenly, the impossible starts to look possible.
Okay, so that sounds fantastic in theory, but how do you actually do it? How do you live like that? Well, the sermon gives us a really practical 4-step guide for turning this belief into your day-to-day reality. So, step 1, if you feel like your faith is weak, just ask for more. Simple as that. 2, when those voices of despair start talking, don't just sit there and take it. You have to actively fight back, rebuke them. 3, memorize scripture. That way you've got a weapon ready to go in those moments of doubt. And finally, number 4, constantly remember what God has done in the past, both in history and, really importantly, in your own life.
Now, there's a really common roadblock that the sermon tackles head-on. It's that feeling that says, okay, sure, God can help other people, but not me. I'm not good enough. I've messed up too much. And this is just such a powerful way to reframe that thought. The logic here completely flips the script. God's mercy isn't some reward you get for being perfect. The whole point of mercy is for those of us who aren't. Your flaws don't disqualify you from getting help. They're the very reason mercy exists in the first place.
So as we start to wrap this up, you can see the whole journey that this message lays out for us. It's a clear path leading from that prison of fear and despair to a place of real, empowered freedom and hope.
And if you take just one thing away today, please let it be this.
your weakness, your fears, that impossible situation you're facing, that is not the end of the story. It's just the before picture, waiting for the after. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Just take a second and look at your own life, right now. What impossible situation, what completely closed door might start to look a little different if you shifted your focus away from the problem and onto a power that has absolutely no limits? So we've all got stuff we want to keep safe, right? But how do we actually do that? Today, we're going to look at two completely different ways we go about seeking security. One is all about code and what you can remember, and the other, it's about faith and letting go. Let's see what happens when we put them side by side.
Just take a second and think about it. What's protecting your most important information right now? Is it a password you came up with, a physical key, or is it something else entirely? We're about to dive into two answers to that question, and, they could not be more different from each other. But they both promise the exact same thing, to keep you safe.
All right, so let's kick things off with a security system that, honestly, billions of us use every single day, probably without even giving it a second thought.
Yeah, this screen. I mean, this might be the most common doorway on the entire planet. It's the lock on the door to, well, everything. Our emails, our photos, our private documents, our entire digital lives. It looks so simple and clean, right? But behind that minimalism is this massive, massive security system we use constantly. And just look at the wording here. It's all about you, your email, your phone. If you forget the password, well, that's on you to fix it. The message is crystal clear. The responsibility, the burden of keeping this safe, it rests entirely on your shoulders.
And then there's the scale of this thing. I mean, just look at this. This isn't some local lock and key. It's global. It supports over 60 languages. It's basically a universal language of digital security built for anyone on Earth.
Okay, now we're going to do a hard pivot, like a complete 180. Let's leave this world of servers and passwords behind for a minute and explore a much, much older system of security, one that deals with a totally different kind of fear.
So here it is. This is the core promise of that second system. It's not about putting up a firewall to protect your data. It's about turning you into a fortified city to protect your very self. And this idea, it comes from a sermon by Pope Shenouda III.
So, what does that even mean, divine protection? Well, according to the source material, you can think of it as a kind of spiritual security. Its job isn't to stop someone from hacking your Wi-Fi, no. It's designed to guard you against life's big trials, those dangers you can't see coming, and even the turmoil inside your own head. And its operating system? It's not code, it's faith. And you know what? This system, according to the sermon, it has its own set of rules, especially for when things get tough. Think of it like a three-step process. First, you'll never be tested with something you can't actually bear. Second, with every single trial, there's always a way out. And third, getting through these challenges, that's where the real growth and rewards are. It's actually a pretty structured way of looking at hardship. Okay, so we've got these two totally different models for security. What happens when we put them right next to each other? Let's find out. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, because the differences are just stark. In the digital world, security is something you have to create and manage, but in this divine system, it's presented as a gift you don't even have to earn. With Google, the responsibility is all on you. Here, that responsibility shifts to a higher power. You're vigilant against hackers versus being protected from dangers you can't even see. In one, you must remember the key. In the other, the promise is that you are remembered. It's a complete flip. And it's not just what happens, it's when. The timing is completely different. We demand instant access to our accounts. But this other system, the sermon suggests, it works on a totally different schedule. It's not about the fastest solution, it's about the best solution. It's kind of like the difference between blasting something in the microwave versus letting it slow cook for hours to get the flavor just right.
When you boil it all down, this isn't really a comparison of mechanics or technology. It gets to a much deeper question. Where do we actually place our trust?
So here's the bottom line, right? It's what each system asks of you. The digital system. It needs you to be active. It requires your memory for the password, your action to type it in, and your constant vigilance to keep it all safe. But the divine system described here, it asks for the exact opposite. It requires your surrender, your faith that you're protected, and your trust in something bigger than yourself. And this really gets to the core of the mindset needed for that second system to work. The idea here is that our big problem is that we look at our challenges in isolation, separate from any kind of divine care. When you only see the problem, but you don't see the power that can solve it, you end up weakening yourself. It's really a call to completely shift your entire perspective on trouble.
The sermon also brings up this really fascinating concept it calls the balance of power. The idea is that there's this divine force out there that's actively keeping things in equilibrium. It stops the powerful from just completely running over the vulnerable. It's framed as this invisible cosmic safety net that prevents the whole system from just falling apart.
So that's what we're left with, these two parallel security systems. One tells you to log in, the other tells you to let go. One protects your data, the other is said to protect your soul. And the thing is, we live in a world where we kind of have to deal with both, don't we? So the big question to walk away with is this. In a world full of digital accounts and spiritual questions, which system gets your ultimate trust?
You know, we're all chasing it, that feeling of real, genuine rest. Just a quiet moment, right? Away from all the pressure and the noise. But what if our entire search for peace is pointed in completely the wrong direction? Today, we're going to explore a really powerful, kind of paradoxical idea. That true rest isn't found by escaping our struggles, but actually by embracing them. Does that question just hit home? That feeling of being totally and completely worn out, just desperate for a moment of peace? If that's you, I just want you to know you are definitely not alone in feeling that way. But here's a radical thought. What if our whole approach to finding rest has been, well, wrong this whole time? What if real peace isn't found in stopping what we're doing, but in starting something new? Let's unpack what that really means. So we're going to kick things off with a paradox that pretty much turns everything we think we know on its head. Not all rest is actually good for you. And believe it or not all hard work, not all toil is bad. This is the big idea we need to get our heads around first. Okay, this distinction right here is absolutely crucial. On one side, you've got what we can call mistaken rest. You know, the kind that's all about the body, which can lead to just being lazy, maybe even a little selfish. But on the other side, there's blessed toil. This is effort that has purpose. It's spiritual, and it's aimed at something much, much higher. So what in the world is this blessed toil? Let's really dive into this. It's all about understanding that hard work, when you do it for a cause that's bigger than yourself, has this incredibly unique and profound value. You know, this piece of wisdom from Proverbs just cuts right to the heart of it all. It's telling us that meaningful effort is never, ever wasted. There's always a profit, and that could be a real result you can see right here and now, or it could be a spiritual reward that goes way beyond our daily lives. And that's the key takeaway right there. When the work you do is for something bigger than just you, your faith, your deepest values, a higher purpose, it never goes unnoticed. It's always seen. It always counts. That kind of toil is never, ever in vain. And if you look through history, you see these powerful examples everywhere. I mean, think about St. Paul, who talked about his immense labor for his mission, or St. Athanasius, who was exiled over and over for what he believed. Their stories, and the stories of so many others, they show us that when you endure hardship for a greater good, you build a legacy that lasts. Now, this whole idea of purposeful toil, it leads us to another really powerful concept. The idea that we find our own rest by giving comfort to other people. It seems kind of backward, doesn't it? We usually think of rest as something we get, right? Something we take for ourselves. But what if true, deep rest is something you actually find by giving it away to someone else? And this brings us to this absolutely beautiful idea of comforting souls. These aren't just people who feel peaceful. They're people who bring peace. Their own happiness comes from comforting others. You know these people. When you talk to them, you just walk away feeling better, a little lighter. The absolute perfect example of this is a mother. Her work is this long, long process of toil, of sacrifice, of preparation. But her real rest, it isn't when the work is finally done. No, it's found in the joy of seeing her child happy and successful. Her selfless effort becomes the source of her own peace. And this principle is just everywhere you look. It's the doctor whose spirit is totally lifted when a patient finally gets better. It's the artist who feels that deep fulfillment when they see an audience moved by their work. Or the aid worker who finds their own rest by easing the suffering of others. Real rest is found in the results of our service. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually apply it when we're right in the middle of our own personal storms? Let's talk about how to find peace when your problems just feel completely overwhelming. Here it is. This is the core advice. You have to shift your perspective. Stop staring at the problem. All that does is make it feel bigger and more powerful. Instead, you've got to turn your focus to the problem solver, to God, or to whatever higher power you believe in. The way forward really involves 3 clear steps. First, you intentionally place your faith right between you and your problem. Second, you focus all your energy on that source of strength, not on the problem. And third, you have to trust in this fundamental truth. Every single problem, no matter how huge it seems, has an end. Oh, I just love this metaphor. Think about every problem you have like it's a pyramid. It builds up, right? It gets higher and steeper until it finally hits a peak. But once it hits that peak, there's nowhere else for it to go but down. No trouble lasts forever. Every single difficulty has a descending slope. So now let's bring all of these different ideas together and really forge a new, much deeper definition of what true, lasting rest actually is. So true rest, it's not laziness. It's not just the absence of work. And it's definitely not some goal you achieve and then you're just done. Instead, true rest is an inner peace that you carry with you while you work. It's doing purposeful things without burning out. It's this beautiful byproduct of living a meaningful, service-oriented life. So how do you know if you've found it? Well, you feel at peace inside, even when you're busy. You're not really stopping, you're just moving from one meaningful thing to the next. You find real, genuine joy in what comes from your efforts, and your main focus is on serving others. That is the feeling of true rest. And maybe no one has ever captured this idea more perfectly than St. Augustine. This one sentence, it just reveals the ultimate truth of this entire message, that the restlessness we all feel in our hearts only finds its true home, its true end, when it connects with its divine source. And so that just leaves us with one final question to think about. After exploring this whole new path, this paradox of toil and peace, where are you going to look for your rest? Maybe not in escaping, but in purpose. Not in taking, but in giving. Where will you find yours?